Do you remember the young actress whose heartbreaking performance as Helen Keller left audiences in stunned silence, many wiping away tears in dark theaters across America? To millions, Patty Duke was the miracle child of Hollywood, proof that talent and determination could turn a little girl into a legend almost overnight. But behind the applause and flashing cameras was a teenager fighting battles no one could see. At just 16, she stood on the Oscar stage, holding Hollywood's highest honor in trembling hands. It looked like the beginning of a dream life, yet even then, the foundations beneath her success were already cracking. The fame that lifted her also trapped her, and the people meant to protect her often became the ones controlling every move she made. While fans saw a confident star rising, Patty herself felt increasingly alone, pushed forward by adults chasing opportunity, while her own childhood quietly disappeared. The smile America adored masked confusion, exhaustion, and a longing for normal life she barely remembered. This is the story behind that smile, the journey of a gifted child star whose life became far more complicated, painful, and ultimately courageous than the world ever imagined. Long before Hollywood lights ever found her, Patty Duke's early years were shaped by chaos inside a small New York home where stability rarely existed. Born Anna Marie Duke in Manhattan and raised in Queens, she grew up surrounded by arguments, heavy silences, and the constant tension of adults struggling with their own demons. Her father battled alcoholism, and her mother's severe depression often left the household emotionally unpredictable. When her father eventually left, financial strain and emotional pressure fell entirely on her mother's shoulders. For Patty and her siblings, childhood quickly became less about play and more about survival. There was little room for comfort or security, and the young girl learned early how fragile life could feel. By the time she was 8, opportunity arrived in the form of talent managers who promised a brighter future. To Patty's exhausted mother, it seemed like a lifeline, a chance for her daughter to escape hardship and perhaps lift the family out of struggle. But the decision that looked like rescue would soon pull Patty into a new world where ambition, control, and pressure replaced the childhood she barely had time to experience. At 8 years old, Patty's life changed the moment talent managers John and Ethel Ross stepped in, convinced they had discovered a future star. For her struggling mother, their offer felt like salvation. The Rosses promised training, connections, and a stable environment that could turn a shy New York child into a professional performer. The condition, however, was drastic. Patty would live with them. Almost overnight, Anna Marie Duke was removed from the life she knew and placed into a household where every detail became part of a carefully planned career. The Ross family didn't just guide her acting, they reshaped her identity. Her age was altered for casting advantages, her background polished, and even her speech corrected to erase her strong New York accent. Then came the moment that symbolized everything changing. Anna Marie, they told her, was gone. From now on, she was Patty Duke, a marketable name, easier to remember, easier to sell. But beneath the polished new image stood a little girl slowly losing connection with who she really was, stepping into fame long before she understood its cost. Life inside the Ross household quickly became less about family and more about discipline, schedules, and performance. Patty's days filled with acting lessons, rehearsals, auditions, and strict instructions on how to behave, speak, and even smile in public. Childhood games were replaced with studio lights, memorized lines, and constant expectations to succeed. Contact with her real family grew increasingly distant. Visits with her mother became rare, sometimes limited to moments when her mother came to the Ross home to do laundry. To a child, the separation felt confusing and painful, planting feelings of abandonment that would follow Patty for years. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted. Patty later revealed she was given medication to keep her calm and focused, sometimes even alcohol, at an age when most children were still learning multiplication tables. Boundaries blurred in ways she struggled to fully explain until much later in life. Yet even under such strain, her natural talent flourished, and soon an opportunity arrived that would not only change her career, it would forever place her name in Hollywood history. In 1959, Patty landed the role that would transform her life. Helen Keller in the Broadway production of The Miracle Worker. The part demanded extraordinary emotional and physical commitment, far beyond what most child actors were ever asked to give. To portray a girl who could neither see nor hear, Patty trained relentlessly, rehearsing scenes that required exhausting physical struggles with co-star Anne Bancroft, who played teacher Annie Sullivan. Night after night, audiences watched the intense battles between student and teacher unfold on stage, and many left the theater shaken by the realism of Patty's performance. She wasn't simply acting, she seemed to become Helen Keller, capturing the frustration, isolation, and breakthrough moments with astonishing honesty. For Patty, the experience also introduced something rare in her young life: kindness. Bancroft treated her with warmth and respect, offering encouragement instead of control. It was one of the few adult relationships in those years that felt safe. The success of the play propelled Patty into national fame, setting the stage for Hollywood's next move, and an achievement that would make history. When Hollywood adapted The Miracle Worker for the screen in 1962, Patty once again stepped into the role that had already defined her young career. Some studio executives worried audiences wouldn't believe she could still portray a much younger Helen Keller, but clever camera work and Patty's emotional intensity erased all doubts. The film stunned critics and audiences alike. Her performance felt raw and painfully real, so convincing that many viewers forgot the actress on screen was still only a teenager, carrying enormous professional pressure. Awards buzz quickly followed, and Patty soon found herself at the Academy Awards surrounded by the biggest stars in the world. Then came the moment few 16-year-olds could imagine. Her name was called, and Patty Duke became the youngest winner at the time to receive the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. Standing before Hollywood royalty, she delivered a brief, almost shy acceptance. "Thank you." But even as America celebrated her triumph, Patty's personal life remained tightly controlled. Fame had arrived, yet freedom still felt far away. After the Oscar win, the people managing Patty's career worried she might forever be seen only as Helen Keller. Determined to prove her versatility, they pushed her into new territory: music. Surprisingly, Patty adapted quickly. In the mid-1960s, she began recording pop songs, and singles like "Don't Just Stand There" climbed the charts, landing her appearances on major television programs watched by millions of Americans each week. Audiences who once knew her only from dramatic roles now saw a cheerful teenage performer singing lighthearted tunes, smiling under bright studio lights. The transformation seemed effortless, as if Patty could succeed in any field she entered. Soon, television executives saw opportunity as well. In 1963, she became one of the youngest performers ever to headline her own series, The Patty Duke Show. Even more impressive, she played two roles, identical cousins with completely opposite personalities. Viewers loved the clever idea, but behind the scenes, the demanding schedule stretched Patty thinner than ever. While America enjoyed the comedy, Patty herself was growing exhausted, quietly longing for control over her own life. By the mid-1960s, the pressure of constant work and years of strict control began to wear Patty down. Though still adored by television audiences, she felt increasingly trapped by the very success that made her famous. Quietly, she started pushing back against the managers who had directed nearly every part of her life since childhood. For the first time, Patty chose independence, moving out on her own and trying to make decisions without the Ross family's approval. Around this time, she became involved with Harry Falk Jr., an assistant director nearly twice her age. Their relationship shocked those around her, especially the managers who feared losing their influence over her career. Attempts were made to separate them, including relocating production, but Patty refused to bend. It was a risky step for someone who had spent her life being told what to do. She was determined to claim adulthood, even if she wasn't fully prepared for the consequences. The choices she made during this period would soon lead her into darker, more complicated roles, both on-screen and in her personal life. In 1967, Patty accepted a role that shocked many of the fans who still saw her as America's wholesome teenage star. In Valley of the Dolls, she played Neely O'Hara, a talented singer whose rise to fame spirals into addiction, insecurity, and emotional collapse. The character's struggles felt uncomfortably close to the pressures Patty herself was facing behind the scenes. Audiences weren't ready for the transformation. The cheerful girl from television now appeared on screen as a troubled, volatile performer unraveling under the weight of success. Critics were divided, and many viewers struggled to separate Patty from the darker character she portrayed. Yet over time, the film developed a cult following, and her performance gained new appreciation. Ironically, while Patty's career was trying to evolve, her personal life hovered near real tragedy. During filming, she became friends with Sharon Tate and was once invited to an evening gathering at Tate's home, a plan she canceled at the last minute due to illness. Days later, Tate and others were murdered, a chilling reminder of how narrowly Patty had escaped being present on one of Hollywood's darkest nights. As the 1970s began, Patty continued searching for roles that would redefine her career. She delivered powerful performances in projects like Me, Natalie and the television drama My Sweet Charlie, earning major praise and even winning an Emmy Award. To viewers, it looked like Patty Duke had successfully matured into a respected dramatic actress. But behind the applause, her personal life grew increasingly chaotic. Romantic relationships overlapped, emotions ran high, and decisions were often made in moments of confusion rather than clarity. After ending one relationship, she became involved with Desi Arnaz Jr., the teenage son of television icon Lucille Ball, a romance that quickly attracted media attention and family disapproval. Soon after, Patty entered a sudden marriage with music promoter Michael Tell upon discovering she was pregnant. The marriage lasted only days, leaving emotional and personal complications that would follow her for years. Even as awards arrived, stability seemed to slip further from reach, and Patty's private struggles were beginning to overshadow her professional success. In the years that followed, Patty's career continued delivering moments of success, but internally she felt increasingly unstable. Emotional highs and crushing lows began shaping her daily life, often leaving those closest to her confused and worried. She married actor John Astin in the early 1970s, and together they raised her son, Sean, whom Astin lovingly accepted as his own. From the outside, Patty appeared to have finally found balance, a working actress, a wife, and a mother building a family life. Yet behind closed doors, her emotional struggles deepened. Sudden mood swings and periods of despair made home life unpredictable, and Patty later admitted that motherhood was far more challenging than she had ever imagined. Meanwhile, questions surrounding Sean's biological father quietly lingered for decades, adding another layer of complexity to her personal story. Only much later would DNA testing reveal that Michael Tell, her brief husband, was in fact his biological parent, finally closing a long-standing mystery. But even with professional accomplishments continuing, Patty herself felt increasingly lost inside a battle she did not yet understand. By the early 1980s, years of emotional instability, substance struggles, and personal turmoil had taken a heavy toll. Relationships suffered, careers stalled, and Patty herself felt trapped in cycles she couldn't control. Then, in 1982, a psychiatrist finally gave a name to the chaos she had been living with for decades: manic depression, now known as bipolar disorder. The diagnosis was both frightening and relieving. For the first time, Patty understood that her unpredictable highs and devastating lows were not personal failures, but symptoms of an illness that could be treated. With proper medication and therapy, her life slowly began to stabilize. Although her marriage to John Astin ended during this period, Patty began rebuilding her relationship with her children and taking steps toward healthier living. Rather than hiding her condition, she made a bold decision that few public figures dared at the time. Patty chose to speak openly about mental illness, determined that others suffering in silence would know they were not alone, a choice that would redefine her legacy far beyond acting. In the late 1980s, Patty took another courageous step by putting her life story into words. Her autobiography, Call Me Anna, revealed the painful realities behind her child fame, the control, emotional wounds, and confusion that had followed her since she first entered show business. For many readers, the book shattered the glamorous illusions surrounding child stardom. Some industry insiders warned that exposing such personal history might damage her reputation, but Patty had grown tired of hiding. Writing became part of her healing, allowing her to reclaim the identity that had once been taken from her. Later, in a second memoir, she spoke even more openly about living with bipolar disorder, helping readers better understand an illness still widely misunderstood at the time. Rather than allowing bitterness to define her, Patty sought reconciliation where possible, even attempting to mend relationships from her past. It was not about forgetting the hurt, but about freeing herself from it. For the first time, Patty Duke's story belonged fully to her. After decades of turbulence, Patty finally found a measure of peace away from Hollywood's relentless spotlight. In 1986, she married Michael Pierce, a man outside the entertainment industry who offered stability rather than pressure. The couple settled in Idaho, far from studio demands, where Patty embraced a quieter life and focused on family and advocacy work. They later adopted a son, Kevin, adding a new chapter to her journey as a mother. Though she stepped back from constant acting work, Patty never fully left the arts, appearing in television roles and earning additional award nominations. Recognition continued, including a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where her sons proudly stood beside her, a moment symbolizing how far both she and her family had come. On March 29, 2016, Patty Duke passed away at age 69 due to complications from sepsis. Tributes poured in, honoring not only her talent, but her bravery in speaking openly about mental illness. In the end, Patty Duke's greatest legacy wasn't just the roles she played, but the lives she helped by proving that even after years of darkness, healing and hope are possible. For many former child actors, fame fades into cautionary tales, careers remembered more for collapse than accomplishment. Patty Duke's life easily could have followed that same painful script. The pressures placed on her as a child, the manipulation, emotional wounds, and years of untreated illness might have ended her story very differently. Yet what makes Patty's journey remarkable is not simply that she survived, but that she eventually transformed her struggles into purpose. By openly confronting her past and advocating for mental health awareness, she helped change conversations that once remained hidden behind shame and silence. Thousands who never met her still found comfort in her honesty. Generations continue discovering her performances, from the fierce determination of Helen Keller to the many complex women she later portrayed. But beyond the screen, Patty's real triumph was reclaiming control of her own life after years of losing it to others. In the end, the little girl who once felt powerless grew into a woman whose voice helped countless others find their own, ensuring that Patty Duke's story would never simply fade into Hollywood history.